your job was to be like, make sure the PO is created, that, you have it done before the invoice is in, that the money is flowing out, and that, you have the right supplier onboarded. And really what we should have been looking at, if we had a, magic mirror, would be like, when people bring the suppliers to you, kind of asking like, hey, so how did you find them? And if like, oh, I found it from my last company. They're like, well, was it worth it to bring them over? Like, do they fit the need? Or does it just fit you because it's comfortable? Because let me tell you, in like 6 months, they're not gonna be able to make those cardboard boxes that you want. We're gonna have to start diversifying suppliers, like outside of China, or locally in the US, or all of these people that we are working for, they're not actually gonna be able to do the job because they can't come in. So like thinking a little bit more strategically and like digging deeper, and not worrying so much about like, did the button get pushed? Did the PO get created exactly 5 hours before the invoice came in, right?
Thank you so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Today, we have the great pleasure, very artsy pleasure, of being joined by Guru and Jace from Etsy. And they are both a procurement generalist for Guru, with this transformation passion to go and bring sourcing and AI and bring the best in. And Jace bringing all of that experience from retail and IT and in procurement, and then so passionate about doing more with less. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on the Sean. Delighted.
So there's so much change. There's such a pace of innovation. What are the biggest things that you've seen in the last 6 months that you want to make sure other people are seeing that have had an impact for you? Guru?
I'm going to go first. Thanks, Sean. So the 6 months, I can't believe how much the technology landscape has changed around procurement. Like the scale of different startups and the use of AI, and even the use of the word AI around it is kind of like, very, overwhelming at times, but also it's very exciting at the same time. So for me, we are living in exciting times. The old technology system almost doesn't feel like it applies anymore.
Jace, what would you add to that? Biggest things in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, building on it, I think 6 months ago when I heard AI, it was kind of like, oh man, what does this mean for us? But after going to DPW and just kind of being really curious, it just seems like there's an opportunity for us to do a deeper depth of work and get rid of regular everyday button pushing stuff that like doesn't add value to us as humans.
Yeah. Those rocks in people's shoes, help getting them out. Guru, we were talking earlier about that human element and the connections. Jace, what would you add about how you're looking at the human connection before and after, or without AI?
Yeah, like I think with all of this new AI technologies and stuff, and the possibility to use them, I firmly believe like procurement previously, which was seen as like a processing function or like a support function. One of the key things that we do is actually we are very much a people-oriented function. We bring suppliers and the buyers together. We understand the problems, and we find the right partnerships. And with all this noise potentially going away, we can actually focus on relationships, and we can actually focus on what is important and what matters to our businesses and to our suppliers, and bring those mutually beneficial connections together and make it more more effective. So if anything, I would say with the use of AI, our roles are becoming more amplified, and our people aspect of our roles is definitely becoming more important than it has ever been.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to have a relationship with an agent, but that enablement and creating the tools and the framework for somebody else in the business to have that relationship and have the buddy, have the helper to help keep the relationship on the rails and meet all the other needs that other departments like finance and procurement have. When I think about 6 years ago, there's so much that we've learned for each of us. Guru, what do you know now that you wish you knew 6 years ago?
So 6 years ago, I was fairly young back then as well. So for me, procurement was this tight ship that needs to be run to make sure that people are spending money appropriately. All the approvals are done. Suppliers have, we have over-indexed on risk assessment and those kind of things. What I probably did not over-index on is how procurement can be a business enabler and a growth function. So we are not only focusing on savings and avoiding risk and making sure all the check boxes are ticked, but also making sure that the money that the company is spending is actually enabling top line growth, and we are choosing the right partners, which enables that growth and bringing speed so company can move and be nimble and flexible and be as quick as possible. So for me, that is definitely a new muscle that I gained, and I'm thankful that I did.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's that going from compliance to enablement is such a journey, and it's so much more rewarding too. Because one of them you feel like you're the police and you're chasing people down with a baton, and the other one you're helping them reach new heights like a coach, and it's really really fun. Jace, what would you add when you think about what you wish you knew 6 years ago?
That COVID was coming, probably number one.
That'd be handy.
Because it kind of informs, at the time, very much to what Guru said, your job was to be make sure the PO is created, that, you have it done before the invoice is in, that the money is flowing out, and that, you have the right supplier onboarded. And really what we should have been looking at, if we had a, magic mirror, would be when people bring the suppliers to you, kind of asking hey, so how'd you find them? And if oh, I found it from my last company, be well, was it worth it to bring them over? Do they fit the need, or does it just fit you because it's comfortable? Because let me tell you, in 6 months, they're not gonna be able to make those cardboard boxes that you want. We're gonna have to start diversifying suppliers outside of China, or locally in the US, or all of these people that we are working for, they're not actually gonna be able to do the job because they can't come in. So thinking a little bit more strategically and digging deeper and not worrying so much about did the button get pushed? Did the PO get created exactly 5 hours before the invoice came in, right?
Yeah, there's so much in that, in the stakeholder management, right? And what matters. This was really fascinating. I think it throws a lot of people for a loop because there's so much kind of gospel out there of there's direct procurement and there's indirect procurement, and then there's companies like yours where there is no direct procurement because you're a marketplace. And this ongoing journey of what helped somebody before may not apply, may not be true. And I think that's a really powerful reminder for all of us. And so there's a friend of mine, Mark, likes to ask, so then what? So then what? Or another friend, so what? So what? So that, right? And so that kind of asking those questions sometimes is part of that stakeholder management, to dig deep, as you said, to understand what really matters. When we get into why, speaking of why, some people end up kind of going by default to a particular procurement solution. I think there's often my big ERP vendor told me to buy ... And then sometimes that's the easy way to do it. But that's not necessarily, going to be the most effective. And because the two of you have been so good at asking why and exploring, this was part of what brought you to DPW too. In contrast to, just do what the big guy recommended, or the big SI, or the big software, or whatever that was. What brought you there? Guru, start with you.
Yeah, sure. For us, we were seeing a fundamental shift in the technical landscape, the technology landscape of procurement, right? And we talked about this earlier. The first wave was kind of basically ERPs were we're having those procurement modules to make sure the data intake and the data is structured so that the finance and the accounting teams and everybody has the right information in the right format. But that quickly became very challenging for the end user or the procurement teams to kind of go into these ERPs and learn all the codes and do it the right way, etc. And then you had the second wave of tools, which essentially simplified the day-to-day process flows, but it was still primarily geared for a procurement team or a procurement department. And end users struggle with, how do you operate it? What button do I click? And what happens when I click this submit button? Who's going to approve?
Why do I have to put a D in that little tiny box?
Exactly.
What's the D for?
100%, right? And what we are seeing now is with the advent of AI and also the new idea of intake and orchestration and etc., the end user is now at the forefront and they are at the center of procurement and the process. It's no longer geared for the back end finances and the IT teams and the procurement teams. It is whatever format the end user would like. You raise a request on Slack or raise a request using natural language or use the system that you want to use. And all the data is kind of orchestrated, integrated to the backend ERP to the point where the ERPs are not even visible anymore. Like I personally don't know that I've ever gone to Workday to check my POs and invoices, and I manage a procurement team. So I'm pretty sure end users won't even care what data it's there in the ERP. So we wanted to see what kind of technologies are out there and what are those capabilities. That's why we went to DPW. And kind of what we saw there is, there's this three layers of tech landscape evolving. Like, so there is this generic AI, which can pretty much solve your day-to-day business cases, which is generic in nature. Like, you need a market research, you need a quick understanding of benchmarks, or, you want to draft a document, a business case, an RFP document, etc. But they don't have workflows built into them just yet. So you have a second layer of point solutions, which has taken an agentic view, which has a workflows built in, which also can synthesize large language models and large data sets and gives you a little bit more value to what you're searching, like, automatic risk grading or, contract drafting or, suggesting a particular clause based on your previous contracts. So those are all your point solutions, which essentially can do one thing really, really well, but they're not going to do everything. And that's where the third layer comes in, which is an intake and orchestration system, which essentially integrates all of these layers and then feeds the data back into whatever your system of record is, and essentially kind of stitches all of that together. So our eyes were kind of opened up and say, okay, this is what now an AI ecosystem is looking like. It's not just one system that you buy and and you replace your existing ERP or your P2P system and you're done for it. No, you have to think about all these three layers together, and you need your teams to also to think about these three layers together. Your IT teams to look at these three layers together, and then have the skills to understand that here's how you need to change this, here's how you need to implement all of these and integrate it. And so it's essentially a new way of running a procurement team versus, oh, here's a new software, replace your existing P2P and you're done with it. That is not what we saw in DPW. So that was very interesting for us.
Yeah, 100%. Because that, I'll call it the legacy approach, is implement your ERP, stick a source to pay thing on top of it, and you're done. And that is too rigid for today's business. It's too one size fits all. And I think that flexibility that intake and orchestration layers on is very important, like you said. Jace, what would you add, when you think about, what brought you there and the spirit that you showed up with?
Like to piggyback off of Guru, I went there with curiosity to see what was in the market, and if what we have today is that good for the next 10 years. And I think some of the things that we found were really eye-opening, because one of the biggest challenges any company has when you implement like a procurement tool is using the same vocabulary, right? Your marketing team may not call a supplier, maybe they'll call them a vendor or something else versus what your IT team was. And it can be really challenging as the procurement team to train, because you're like, okay, so the common language is this. And that's great at that first training, but then everybody else forgets it afterwards. A lot of the technology that we saw kind of removes that level, right? There's a lot of heavy training needed because there's natural language being used. You don't have to worry about having a common vocabulary. They just need to have an idea of how the PO needs to be created, right? They need to kind of know the supplier, how much they want to use, and like when they need to have it in by. And that was something I didn't think about. But while I was there, like I started getting really curious and kind of going in and saying, okay, if I found this, well, what else is out there? What else are we not aware of? And what can we bring back to our people to, one, make life easier so we don't have to do maybe as much training, but then two, you have to think about the ecosystem of the company. People come and go. You need to have a platform that allows this natural flow of business to happen without having to stop and be like, so you're the new manager. Let's have a 1 hour training on how to create a PO, where it could just be, hey, I'm going to give you a 15-minute breakdown. Like, you can do this all in Slack here or Teams. If you have any questions or something kind of weird pops up, feel free to give me a call, but you're ready to go and create your first PO today. And it's like their third day at work.
Yeah.
Like, that was something I think that really blew my mind at DPW. It wasn't just intake and orchestration tools. It was that for like CLM and some of the agentic agents that were in there. Like, just 6 years ago, it was like a pipe dream.
Yeah.
You're like, what do you mean I don't have to train this much? It's 15 minutes and done.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That curiosity is so powerful. And the other part that I'd add on top of that is the set of conditions or set of outcomes or capabilities that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago was damn near impossible is now just hard. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are doing the hard work to go make it easier for organizations to bring that home. Jace, Guru, so grateful for you guys sharing your experience, your wisdom, and emphasizing, Jace, keep celebrating curiosity. I am a huge fan of curiosity, as many of you know, including as the parent of, teenagers. Then, you'll find curiosity is very helpful. It's very difficult to get frustrated when you stay curious. Same thing applies in business meetings. Very difficult to get frustrated when you stay curious. And you will find the outcomes when your eyes are open, when you bring the curiosity. So keep showing up with that, Jace. Let's celebrate that. And to all of you watching, thank you so much for joining. This has been another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much, guys.
Sean, bye.
Thanks. Hi.